Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today I have Bone Bridger and John Automates to help me try to figure out what the hell we watched this weekend, because The Marvels is certainly not a film in any capacity. It is such a mess. I found it to be the most upset watching a movie I've ever been. I think it's the most patronizing movie experience I've ever felt in my life. The fact that Kevin Feige watched this movie and was like, it's good. You know, girls are going to show up regardless is absolutely disgusting to me. And you know who did show up? Men showed up. 65% of the demographic that saw this movie were men. So that didn't work at all because women saw the trailer and were like, this looks dumb as hell. This is not something that I care to see. And if I am going to see it, maybe I'll throw it on and I get at home. And I guarantee that when they do watch it at home, they're going to shut it off because it is an abomination of a movie. And I really I want to emphasize that I found that no one on that set except for Iman Vellani, because she's a young girl, she was happy to be there, obviously, because it's a huge opportunity for her, regardless of how problematic the shooting was. No one wanted to be there. And, you know, Teyana Parris, I know like she has a really good rapport with Nia DaCosta and they get along really well because they worked on Candyman together. So I have a feeling this is not any detriment to Nia DaCosta, and I still like believe that. And like, of course, she started working on her next film immediately as soon as she could jump ship because, like, my goodness, this is such a I just can't even believe this was released. What are your thoughts?
That was the greatest opening for a Nerdy Film Girl video I've ever witnessed, and I'm speechless, John. Like, I mean, yeah, because here's the thing, and this is what I'm gonna without calling out any specific people on YouTube and stuff, is this was the ultimate movie where we found out what reviewers were being honest. There are some reviewers that are definitely hateful too much, and there's some reviewers that are definitely positive too much. The positive ones that tried to hold on to this idea that this movie was for women somehow, and it was like a statement that like it's going to make the world better, and if you hate it, you're sexist. That really exposed a lot of people because that's not the case. As you said, this is a bad film from a production quality, editing, VFX, acting, writing, overarching Kevin Feige story design, the after credit scene. This is a disaster. I mean, there's nothing really to point out that it's good other than, like you said, you had one actor who was glad to be there and was still in that spirit of like, I enjoy it. And then you had like a $25 million Brie Larson who did not care.
It is an absolute travesty. And this is one of those weird things where like a narrative you ever see a situation where you just can't lie yourself out of it? Like you are caught from all sides. Like if you're a kid, you try to lie about like your brother or sister doing something only to find out that you don't have any siblings. It's one of those types of situation where like they quite literally are trying. Every time they try to figure out a reason why the movie didn't work, the reason is debunked almost immediately. Like, you know, hey, is this one of those situations where men hate the movie? No, majority of the audience is men. Is this one of those situations where the previous movie wasn't good or didn't make any money? Nope. Captain Marvel made $1 billion, regardless of the reasoning. And we all know the reasoning. It still made $1 billion. Is this a situation where you didn't have to do homework? No, you actually have to do it. And there's plenty of shows and reasons. You can't just come into it cold and expect to really know what's going on. There's nothing to really showcase or prove why this would have done poorly, other than the fact that it was written and directed. And that's a shame too, because I like Nia DaCosta and I like her previous work. Nerdy Film Girl, I'm sure you agree, but this wasn't it. And it does make me question, how much did Disney come in and say, we're going to take it from here, versus how much was actually allowed to be written and directed by Nia and by that writing team?
Yeah, there were like maybe 2 shots in the whole film that felt like her, and there was one in space that it was like a great upside down. I just like the movement of her camera work is very similar to what I saw in Candyman, and there's only like literally 2 times that happened in this entire movie. And I have to say, this script, I would not be surprised if it was the first AI written script that they tried to put a fast one over everyone, because that's how it felt. It's so disconnected. It felt so cold, and like, yeah, you can slap 3 people's names on the script, but like, and just pay them extra. I'm telling you guys, just because of how the writer's strike happened all like during this summer and stuff, I really just wouldn't be surprised if they were doing an experiment with AI screenwriting.
It felt lifeless. It actually did feel lifeless. It made me reevaluate everything I thought about Marvel, because before this movie came out, we had been ranking projects and stuff. And Secret Invasion's bad for silly, crazy reasons, like stuff that I can't imagine. But there are some moments at the beginning of the show where you're like, okay, this has potential. There's some things building up to it. They waste it. The Eternals is my least favorite Marvel movie until this. And I think the Eternals, I'm too hard on it. Like it's a story. I don't like it, but it's a story. This is not a complete movie. I don't even know if this is a complete thought. I don't really know how anyone could defend this unless they're trying to just appeal to the base of we're not allowed to criticize things. We're not allowed to be critical, because Nerdy Film Girl, you're a great example. You would never criticize something unless you truly believed it. That's just not your personality on here. You're not going to do that. So for you to feel this way coming out of it, it's a beacon, like, red flashing lights. And we've seen a lot of people deny it. But I think, the fumble on this project, Marvel wise, is going to be felt for years to come, because it's like the Eternals. Are they just going to ignore what happened? Because that's the only way to move forward. I don't think Captain Marvel's coming back. Honestly, I don't know if any of them besides Miss Marvel should come back. And I mean Nick Fury too. I want to go into a video one day talking about what they've done to him between Secret Invasion and the Marvels. I don't even want to see Samuel Jackson on screen anymore. And that's sad. He was one of my favorite actors of all time. You talk about a presence. I mean, I would say his role in the second Captain America movie was so pivotal and important, and it set the future up. We were going to see what he did. What is Nick Fury going to do? Is he going to rebuild S.H.I.E.L.D. or Saber? Nope. Nothing.
You can't, this movie cannot be ignored the way Eternals can be ignored. And that's the problem. Eternals had its own caveat in the movie with the whole thing of we cannot interfere. That was the entire caveat. That was the whole, like, just in case we need an out, that's their out. We don't interfere. And that was what it ended up being, to the point where even the Celestials, which are supposed to be a major thing, didn't end up mattering that much. But for Captain Marvel, they took the opposite approach. They said, all of this stuff matters. And it was one of those where it's like, Captain Marvel, this is going to lead into her having her own thing again for another movie. Iman Vellani's Miss Marvel, that's going to matter moving forward for the Young Avengers. Monica Rambeau, is she binary? Is she not binary? Is she going to be stuck in that universe? Is the X-Men now going to be in there with Beast and the whole thing? But all of it was supposed to matter. And I don't think it's going to have the same far-reaching effects as maybe any type of movie that came before, quite literally, but it isn't going to be something that's going to be able to be ignored or tossed to the wayside the way Eternals was.
Yeah, because you know what they think matters to women? They think throw a musical number in there. I'm very well versed in musical theater. That was the cringiest, awkward, weirdest thing I've ever seen. And then they're also like, hey, let's have like a sleepover atmosphere where they all throw popcorn into each other's mouths while they're learning their powers. It's like, what? Like, I don't get it at all. And like, I saw an interview with Nia like recently, and they're like, what were your influences for like the way that it looks? And she's talking about like the groundedness of Interstellar and like 2001 Space Odyssey, and like bringing up like what her version of that movie she'd like it to be, essentially. And I'm like, girl, they would never let you do that for a Marvel movie. And like, of course they're not. They're like, no, just have the most cringiest moment with bringing Valkyrie and like as a reshoot and like make that. I mean, that was bizarre to me. I don't know if you felt how awkward that was.
That Valkyrie, I gotta tell you, that hurts a lot of people when it comes to who people use for their movies. Case in point, everybody knows every director has their group of people that they use all the time, right? Scorsese has his, Nolan has his. Like, people have the people, I work best with this person or this group of people. And one of the things we know is that Nia works best with Teyana Paris, and Nia works really the whole thing is a mess because it does look like nepotism's not the right word, but it's just it just looks like you were doing a favor. So when you have Tessa Thompson to show up but then you know that she's also working on a current movie with Tessa Thompson, because when Tessa shows up, when Valkyrie shows up, it's like, what are you even doing here? Like you have, if there's anyone who doesn't need to be a part of this story, it's you. Like there's a lot of other people who could have shown up first. A lot of other people who could have shown up first. I'm talking, you could have had Okoye from Black Panther show up first before Valkyrie. At least her and Captain Marvel at least appear at the same time on the same screen in Shang-Chi. But no, you have, and it's a weird, and I guess Valkyrie shows up there too. But it's just one of those things where it's like they have the conversation, and you're like, well, you don't really have that kind of relationship.
No,
do you?
they don't. They don't. It was like
No.
fake friends. It was really weird.
Yep. This movie, so I kept thinking about this over and over in the theater, and there's so many things you can unpeel. The musical scene is one. I mean, I couldn't even function when that happened. I literally thought about leaving. I was like, I know that I'm supposed to stay for YouTube, but I could leave. It is an option. So this movie, they got a tax credit of $50 million. This was $276 million in terms of actual money spent on just production. That was a $276 million movie where I can't point out a scene where I thought they did basic level college filmmaking quality. Like it was low tier. And it's why I think Nia DaCosta has done so many interviews in the last few weeks, because she knows career-wise she better start distancing herself. And that whole story about her not knowing what was going on because Kevin Feige and them were just doing things, she better keep pushing that narrative, because this does damage to everyone involved, I think. Because I mean, Wall Street this morning, the stock stuff, they were talking about how horrible that movie was. These are people that are just investor people that don't talk about movies. And for an hour, all they did was talk about how Disney's downfall and the Marvels was a joke. That's crazy.
I agree with you. And I think you were right about the interviews. And I do fully believe now that Kevin Feige doesn't care about his female audience, the female fans at all, because, it's like, we have to make this movie. So let's just make it like 4 girls and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter if that's good. And like, I know I said that earlier, but I really, really, really felt strongly about that. And then the villain I want to talk to you about as well, because it kind of felt like this was a worst case scenario, because at least you had Christian Bale having some type of more background story, or at least some type of scariness for being a villain. But the villain in this reminded me so much of Thor: Love and Thunder, with Christian Bale as the villain. What did you guys think? Like, I mean, it was just who cares? I mean, I was just like, who cares about this person?
John, you called dar-benn, I mean, as being a bad plan from the get-go, but I didn't think it'd be, I mean, that character's a nothingness. They could have just had a blank screen in the same time frame, and I'd have been just as fine.
Yeah, it was a underdeveloped Zod. It was one of those where you're going to have a situation where, I need to steal stuff in order to help my world, but they don't explain. There's some missed opportunities with this where they dropped the ball. Having dar-benn be, I mean, if you wanted to really, one of the good things about Superman, not to turn this into a Marvel DC thing, but one of the biggest reasons why Man of Steel works to some degree with the villain is because Michael Shannon plays that part with real intensity, to the point where you're like, oh no, he means business. At no point does dar-benn really mean business. Yeah, she tries to do certain things, but she looks comedic because they didn't make her look good, which is that's another problem by itself. The costume design for her character was really, really poor. But at least have her show some legitimate intensity. Have her be something. Remember, she's going toe-to-toe, not with just Captain Marvel, who suddenly isn't nearly as strong as she should be, but yet still is. That's a whole nother problem. But she's going toe-to-toe with all 3 of them. Have her really be somebody of presence, especially when you try to do the little Thanos comparison tease and all that. It didn't make a lot of sense. But then to have all of that, for her to have the power she has and everything along those lines, and to give her almost no real backstory other than exposition, it's tough. That one's tough.
There was so much exposition in this movie, and for parts that really could have made a big difference. And you know, you guys are talking about how much they've dropped the ball on missed opportunities. I thought one of the missed opportunities was that scene when Monica Rambeau has I don't want to call them headphones, but whatever they are, and they go back into her memories.
The
And
Beats by Dre.
really, yeah, yeah,
Could have been a
and it's like
product
really
placement.
intense for her, and she's like, "No, I don't want to deal with that." And it's like, that's great setup, but then you don't do anything with that ever again the rest of the movie. And that was like one of the more adult things they really could have elevated story wise.
But she couldn't handle it. It was just too tough. You know, being a superhero, it's real hard to make sacrifices like enduring a little mental anguish for the sake of saving a planet. I don't know. There was nothing on the line there. There was no stakes. I don't even know. Like, if I were to start from the beginning and say I need to fix this movie, the only thing I think I would do is take an eraser and erase it and just be like, okay, I'm done, and walk away, because I don't even know where you could go in and say, okay, well, like, all right, right there, maybe they should have actually followed through with that and had some stakes. But then they like undo it in the next scene with like dar-benn, and they're not being like a threat really. Also, the costume design. Did you want to? Okay. Barbie is probably going to win best costume, best set design.
Oh, for
You know
sure.
what's not going to win?
Yeah.
The Marvels is not going to win best costume and best set design. What was dar-benn wearing? Like, I usually don't care, but like, you're not menacing. You're not a threat. Also, it looks like you can't move. Like, you clearly can't move
Right.
on set. You're like struggling to like walk around, and you're supposed to be fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes the stunt double very clear when it
Very
does happen,
clear.
and you're like, okay, you know. And that's the thing. Give her a battle garb that makes sense. She is wrapped, like quite literally
Yes.
wrapped, like almost cocoon like. And you're like, all right, well, that's kind of weird. But
they gave her bad
Marvel
contacts,
being afraid.
that's about it.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's
my
about it.
goodness. and some weird veneers, which made no sense. But
Yeah.
Marvel being afraid to take risk. That's what this is. This is Marvel
Yeah.
being afraid to take risks. This is them not being willing to make a villain truly be a villain. This is them not being willing to make Captain Marvel a villain, which is what I've been preaching that for a little bit. Make her the villain, but they don't want to do that. This is a situation where they don't have actual writing to like really progress something forward. Instead, they want to just make it feel good. But you can't have feel good when you're trying to have this also branch into a bunch of other different things. There has to be something where there's a stake to move forward, but there is no stake to move forward here. The movie ends. And yes, they try to do the whole Monica Rambeau beast scene, which was something that was thrown on. That was not an original scene, but that doesn't do anything. They tried to do the Young Avengers scene, but for what are the stakes? You know what I'm saying? And considering that dar-benn kind of defeats herself, the whole thing, this makes so at the end of the day, it is one of those where it's like, well, you know what the stakes were? 3 women getting together in a movie. Well, what's the point at that? Why not? And why do you have to then dumb it down, not just for the audience, but no, it's like, why do you dumb it down for the audience and then make it so that like they can't appreciate a good story? Because that's what it looks like. It seems like Disney's making the choice to say you as an audience can't appreciate a good or coherent story.
Yeah, and that's a problem. The audience is smart. I think that's filmmakers, when they mess up, they don't think their audience is intelligent. The audience is intelligent. It's like the creator of Toy Story and WALL-E, and they talk about the idea of you give the audience a scenario, you let them fill in the gap. You don't fill in the gap. You let them come to the conclusion.
Yeah. It's bizarre that this is what they came up with when you do have, because I personally think on paper, without any writing that has been done, if you were like, let's take these 3 characters and then they can swap, there could be so many layers to that. It really is like kind of like living in someone else's shoes for a time being, right? None of that, like none of that ever happened. It's just I think it was just such a disappointment overall that that's what we got. And I've been saying to you guys on streams and stuff. The only part I was looking forward to anyway were the kittens, and I did think it was funny to use the song from Cats for that song. But again, I was just like, thank God that's something I can enjoy. But like, that's an easy thing to do. That's like having Baby Yoda in a movie. But like, if that's the best thing you have are CGI cats, then there's a huge issue. Yeah, I think I just like, I don't even know what else to say about it, but I just think when you watch a film and you can easily determine what scenes were put in after the fact, that's a problem. And it was like you could feel it every 5 minutes. And I don't even think the film really even opens like a movie ever opens. It felt like I was in the middle of a second act or something. Like, it was very strange, the format that was used for this. Do you guys have any like last words on this film? You know,
I got one last thing.
Yeah.
I was trying to think inside the theater what I'd rather be doing. And I was making a long list of really happy things about like what I'd rather be doing. But I came to the conclusion that I would even rather be eaten by the little bugs in the original Mummy movie that pop out of the wall than watch that movie again. That's my compliment for the movie, John.
Throw it all away. Keep them on, Villani, and get rid of everybody else.
Yeah.
At this point, just I mean everybody. Beast,
everybody,
Binary, Hawk Girl.
Yeah, no.
Get rid of all of them. Keep them on. Move forward. X-Men, Fantastic Four, Miss Marvel, Miles Morales. Do the Earth. Use the incursion to kind of introduce all those characters and just get going. Because there's just no way. There's no way. And quite frankly, to mix and keep mixing, and we just saw Loki basically become He Who Remains. You know what? Let some of those stories go. Burn it all, start anew. That's where I'm at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I agree with you about Iman, and I have to see if this movie does anything. It kind of actually made me want to watch her show, because I actually do like the dynamic with her parents. I think her parents are absolutely hilarious, and I was gravitating towards them the most. So if it does anything, maybe they'll get more viewership for that show. But she clearly should be on the forefront moving forward. So yeah, it's funny, when I saw Beast, I was like, oh, well, Kelsey Grammer is really having a year, because he's like got the Frasier reboot and he's got this, so I don't know what if that's even going to matter in the future. And it was very confusing in that credit scene because of who is Monica Rambeau's mom supposed to be technically in this universe. Do you guys know the answer to that? Because I was trying to figure that out.
Just more Captain Marvel, different version.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's like, all right, well, who is she actually going to be? Is she Captain Marvel, which you can make the case that she is, because technically she is. Is she binary, which she's wearing the binary costume? So you're kind of like, all right, well, she's definitely that. Is she Spectre? Like, she could be any of these, but I'm assuming that she's binary, and that's what she ends up being. But the wild thing is, binary is technically Carol. Anyway, we'll keep it moving.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having this discussion with me. I know I was texting you frantically throughout the entire viewing when I was in the theater, especially with that singing point. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, this is a mess. Kevin Feige, like, make better effing movies. Like, this is a disgrace. And if I hear like women sticking up for this movie, I'm just gonna be like, watch actually good movies, because this is horrific. Like, I know there's a lot of problematic things with Barbie, but like, that is astronomically better than this movie, and people could say that's made for women. So like, I mean, my God, I hated it.
And it was only a couple of months ago. Barbie was only a couple of months ago. So it's not like, oh, you haven't had something this year that actually showcases what a movie made for women that can still attract males to go see it can be.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah, and that's $1 billion movie.
They advertised that movie as fun. They advertised this movie as something meaningful and important. It's for women, and they're bashing people that aren't seeing it. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, no, it just makes it seem like they do not care about their fans. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you all next time.